103.2 Dublin City FM. This is Mental Wealth with Brian Greene for a Tuesday afternoon. You're very welcome to the programme. If you want to get in touch, it's mentalwealth@dublincityfm.ie. For emails, mentalwealth@dublincityfm.ie. If you have any ideas for future programmes, do get in touch. On today's programme, I'm talking all things social media, and I have an expert on the line, Amanda Webb of Spiderworking. Hello, Amanda.
Hey Brian, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I say you're an expert, so over the next 20 minutes you're going to demonstrate that, I'm sure. But you've been, how long have you been on social media?
I'm in this business in Spiderworking 10 years, almost to the date actually. My website went live 10 years and a day ago, so I've been in it a while. I don't think anyone's ever an expert because it changes so much, but I do try and keep up with the trends as they happen.
On that topic of changing, we will come back to what's in the mix now and what's coming down the line in the future. But is it hard to stay on top of everything in social media as, you know, a kind of a thought leader and a trainer and a guru of the area? Like, there's so many things happening.
It is really hard, and I'd have to say I don't keep up with everything. So I know we're going to talk about some of the trends coming up. There's some I just haven't dabbled in yet. I know about them. I know who they're for, but because I haven't had a client that's needed it, I've gone, I don't need to know that yet, because it could be just a full-time job. You wouldn't have any clients keeping up with the different social networks that come on board, the different types of content.
Before we delve into that, tell us about Amanda Webb. You've got the perfect name for Spiderworking. You've got Webb in your name.
I know, and everyone says it. I guess... when I was in school, it was like the worst possible name to have, and everyone called you Spiderweb, and I'm scared of spiders. And so I'm really glad the World Wide Web came along and knocked spiders out of it. And I chose a career, I guess, that fits the name.
So you have Sir Tim Berners-Lee to thank for that.
Yes. So anyone wants to call me Webby now, I don't mind, as long as they're not referring to spiders.
Tell us, is social media good for us, or, you know, is it a double-edged sword? Is it good and bad?
I think it's good and bad. I think, when I started being on social media, I was based in Dublin, and now I live down the country. I live in a site. It's not the middle of nowhere. But I also left all of my friends and connections behind. So, where I used to be able to drop into town and meet someone from coffee, I can't do that anymore. So I think that's when I really got enthusiastic about social media, because it gave me an opportunity to not just stay in touch with the people I knew in Dublin, but also to make connections around the world and have conversations that people who work in offices have around the water cooler. I was still able to do that even from the quietness of my office. So I think in some ways it's helped me stay connected in a place where otherwise I would have just been incredibly lonely. So I think from my point of view, there's definitely, I think for a lot of people that would be isolated otherwise, who have social phobias, who just aren't able to make those connections, it's really powerful. But then, of course, it's 100% addictive. You can spend way too much time on it. Instead of making new connections, you're cutting yourself off from the people around you. It can change the way you perceive yourself. So either it can make you feel more of an ego than you actually have, or more confident about your opinions than you would have felt before. And I think that's, we've seen a lot of that happening in, the politics around the world. Or it can actually have the exact opposite effect, that you just feel scared and cut off, and, you don't want to go out on social media because you feel like there's all these people out there to challenge you. So I think, and that's just some of it. I could go, I love social media, and I don't think I'd be where I am now without it. But I do think, we have to be aware that there are mental health issues associated with it as well.
We've done whole programmes on social inclusion and social exclusion. I suppose it might be underestimated that the tools like Skype and the social media tools, Instagram, and all the chat tools that are out there, they keep us connected. Like in the crash of the Celtic Tiger, in the space of 3 years, 250,000 people left this island, went to work in Canada and Australia. Mm-hmm. Grannies and granddads, brothers and sisters, children were able to contact each other from afar with these tools. That's got to be the big plus and upside.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible. It's incredible as well as just connecting with the people you know, finding new people. When you go somewhere now, as somebody who's kind of, and people who know me now might not believe it, is kind of shy. I love that I can connect with people before I go somewhere, so that then it's taken that coldness out of the situation. So it's not just the people, you're missing because you've travelled away from them. It's also the people that you get to meet who might share your interests, who might share, something else with you that you would have felt wasn't part of your life beforehand. So I think it works for both.
The people will probably see tweets and social media things happening by watching the news, and they see the American president and his latest, whatever it is, annoying people through the medium of Twitter, because he can bypass the fourth estate, the press, the television, the radio people, the journalists, and he's going straight to his followers and to the world. Are we kind of in for a big ride on a roller coaster with this? Like, is it this the way it is now forever and a day? We're in a new realm?
I managed to avoid his tweets completely, and I'm somebody who's on Twitter a lot. And I do think, yes, this is a new way that people have to communicate with their audiences, whether they're a politician, a celebrity. I know celebrities see the up and downside of being able to connect with people that way, or whether you're a business as well. It is a new way of communicating with people, a far more open way. I think probably, just to go off topic, the problem with the American president is that Twitter can't censor what he says. They have got like a new policy in place where they will mark something as being offensive by him, but they leave it up there because they need to have like a testament to what this politician has said. So that's kind of a new thing that they brought in over the last month or so. So whereas if I was to say some of the things that he or other politicians say on social media, it would be taken down. Whereas for the president or for anyone else in that kind of level, it's left up as being a testament to who they are, because I suppose that's important to voters and the history maybe that we can see in the future what happened there.
Yeah, I sometimes get annoyed that he's on Twitter, but my daughter, who's 23, got taken off Twitter because about 4 months ago they asked her what age she was, and she gave her age honestly, and they said, oh, your account's been shut down because you started using Twitter before you were 13, and she lost her account.
Yeah, and I think I suppose there's a lot of worrying around as well with parents. I mean, you'd be quite social savvy, so you'd know exactly, where to advise your daughter. But I know there's an awful lot of parents that aren't social savvy. So when their child says, I want to go on Snapchat or something, if they just say yes, and if there's no legislation, I suppose, in place to protect those children, then stuff can happen. And we know the sort of stuff that's being reported to be happening. So from a responsible parent's point of view, to let your child on Twitter is good. But maybe for my niece, whose parents don't even have a Facebook account, it's not so smart unless they have someone else to advise for them. So I can see it from both sides. And I think they're just complying with the law of the land at this stage, aren't they?
I think, yeah, they're playing kind of catch up with GDPR, and they don't want to be hosting any messages that an underage person did on their system 11 years ago. So it's a kind of a strange one. But she lost the account and she got the handle back, but all the messages are gone, and that saga is now past and over, and I won't dwell on it too much. I wonder if we're touching on something that I like to discuss often, and that is that should we be educating everybody more in media literacy to use these tools properly and better?
I think absolutely. I don't think, I actually think that the younger generation are a lot more responsible than we were. I don't know if you were like me, but, here was this new exciting thing when, it was Facebook and MySpace and Bebo or whatever, mostly Twitter, I think. And it was a new way to communicate to people. And I didn't care what I was saying. And I had no, I'd say I'm going on holiday and, you didn't worry about those things. And I think the younger generation are more responsible than us. So actually, I think there's a lot more education that needs to go into parents, not just parents, but, people of our age group who have messed up, who have done things badly about looking after our own privacy online.
Do you think that parents are now become heavy users of systems like Facebook? Like they weren't in the beginning, it was them worrying about what their kids were doing, but now it's been finely tuned that from the 30-somethings up to the silver surfers, they have everybody scrolling, and wearing off their fingerprints on a piece of glass on a telephone.
Well, that's a big problem, isn't it? Because I guess for parents, it's very often Facebook and Instagram, whereas the younger people, they use different social networks. So they may be savvy on Facebook and Instagram, but they're not really savvy on the networks that their kids are using. But there is the problem that if you're a parent and you're spending all your time scrolling through your phone, how do you discipline a child then? How do you tell your children this isn't something you should be doing? So I think, parents need to look at their own social media use. I know I'm not a parent, but I look at my own social media use because there's other things I want to do than look at my phone. So, I think it's an important thing for us to look at first. I suppose it's the same with anything in parenting. We want to set a good example. So I think as a parent, the first thing you need to do is be aware of the social networks and how they work, but don't spend your life looking at them.
Can I ask you, the promise from the social media companies was that they were going to know more about us and then target advertising that was so well targeted with things that we wanted, it wouldn't even feel like advertising. And I feel that they've completely failed in that regard. And what they've done is they've used analytics and big dumps of data to be able to just keep us on longer and scrolling the same banal data and messages from ourselves and our friends, user-generated content, but we just see the generic ads. We're not seeing this promise that they gave us.
100%. Their whole network is engineered to keep us on their networks and online longer because that's how they make their money, by selling ads. The ads, they're trying to make them personalised, but if you ever look into either your Facebook data or your Google data, they get it so wrong. They get our interests wrong all the time. So actually, one, it could be the advertiser. Some advertisers are just terrible and would release an ad to everyone in Ireland instead of trying to niche it down a little bit. But also Facebook hasn't got, I think it's a bit of relief to me whenever I go and look at the interests that they think I have and they have it wrong. I think I'm always a little bit relieved that they haven't got it right. But also that does mean I'm not seeing ads that are necessarily making me want to buy the stuff I see.
So they've just fine-tuned it for us to stay on. Is there a kind of an optimum time that we could spend well on social media and then like a hourglass we should see it go down and then get off and do something else more interesting, or something that is interesting and then go and share that on social media? Is it a cycle that we should get into but not spend all day and weekend on these things? What is optimum kind of good usage time?
I don't know what the optimum is. My goal is always to use it less, which is, the iPhone. I don't know if you're an iPhone or an Android person, but iPhone has this report built in, and it messages you every week to tell you how much time you spent looking at your phone, which would be, the social media I look at on my computer would be work related, so I'm not including that in the time. But it will tell me how long I spent on my phone and how much time I spent on social sites specifically. So not reading articles, just scrolling. And that just kicks you. That makes you go, oh my goodness, I'm spending 3 hours a day on my phone, and a big chunk of that is Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I need to change that. So then you can start putting things in place. So, I put my phone away from me. I don't have it right next to me to pick up every time I get distracted. And that's my constant battle, is to use it less. So have a look at your usage and just aim on getting those social sites less than what you're using at the moment. And you know what? If you are setting a limit for your kids, make that your limit too, because I think that's realistic and that's fair.
That's a very good point. It's about a week and a half to August, and in August it's traditional that we have the media silly season, and something will come along and it'll be a moral panic about something that is going to make us very ill because it came through the internet. What is, in the trends, what's the new things that are coming down the line in social media that, not the ones that necessarily kill us, but, what's the new stuff that we're going to hear about in this silly season?
I suppose TikTok is the new Snapchat, I would say. It's the one that the younger generation are using. I don't use it. I have an account. It's a video-based service. It's owned by China, so we know already that the paranoia levels are way up about China. Lots of people are worrying about that already. So it wouldn't surprise me if some sort of story comes out about that, because it's one that adults don't necessarily understand. It's got the China angle. It's something new. Kids are using it. It's bound to kind of flare up. Last year we had Fortnite. I'm sure there's some other game out there that I'm unaware of at the moment that's probably going to pop up, because I think particularly, again, for younger people, they're the ways that they're finding to connect to people. When you play a game like Fortnite, you're connecting with your friends. And actually bullying happens there. You know, it's the last thing you'd ever think of, that it was going to happen through gaming, but it does. So I think we'll probably see there is some sort of game there. We've just had that Face app pop up again, which is where you can make yourself look older, and it has Russian connections. I know there's a lot of people freaking about that at the moment, but I'm not sure how much of that is your moral panic and how much of it is reality. So I think we're going to see I definitely think TikTok, because it's growing at such a huge rate, somebody's going to cop onto that soon. So we'll see that come up in August.
I don't think the experts really know whether these Chinese connections or Russian connections to popular apps that have gone viral, they don't really know whether they are ultimately, benign or malignant towards us. But if we don't know, is there a kind of a cautious kind of approach we should take to these things? Like, should we limit what we share?
I suppose we should be cautious. We've seen over the last year or so the attitude that Facebook has had to our data in the past. So I think that was part of them being a startup and not putting anything in place until somebody comes along and points it out. It doesn't erupt. So we've seen it erupt in Facebook. All their mistakes that they've made throughout the year have suddenly come to the surface, and I'm sure there's going to be loads more. The problem with something like that is you're totally ignoring the breaches within Google or within Twitter or the others. When one takes precedence, we stop worrying about the smaller ones, which are probably also doing bad things with our data.
I suppose a lot of what we're saying is very down on social media, but I'm old enough to remember and used services of travel agencies to book a holiday. And nowadays you just go and buy your own airline tickets and sort everything out, and you can walk around the city that you're going to go to with Street View, and all these amazing things are here now that nobody could have dreamt of when I was in a travel agent only 25 years ago. I suppose there are amazing things to be had, and if you kind of temper your overuse or exuberance towards the technologies, you can enjoy the best bits of it without being drowned by the worst bits of it.
Absolutely. And there is so much that's good about social media. I think if you're sitting at home scrolling through your phone for hours on end, that's not so good. But if you're doing it with purpose, there's real value to be had there. Even from the point of view, if you used to have to go and sit in a cafe and wait for an hour for someone, what would you do? Now we've got a world of information available to you, and the way that we're accessing that now is what our friends are sharing and our friends are telling us about. So I think, there is something hugely valuable about that. And even if I am going on holiday somewhere, you can find it. Well, Facebook will even tell you if your friends have been there, where they've been, what they've recommended, and you can know from their recommendations whether that's going to suit you or not. So I think there's huge value there. It's just the word of mouth side of social media is incredible. And like I said, the connecting as well, because it does help you combat loneliness.
Your day job is talking to businesses and helping businesses to put their identity and their messages and stories into social media. Are businesses in Ireland good at, copping on to the benefits that are there in social media, or are they a little bit slow?
I actually think we do really well. I think there's a lot of businesses doing incredibly well. I think where people fall down is they forget that it's not always a sales pitch. So I was just thinking, one of the things when I moved down the country that I started getting that I didn't get when I lived in Dublin were door-to-door salesmen. And who's ever happy when a door-to-door salesman knocks on their door? Are you ever happy? No. If I'm answering the door, it's by accident. I don't want to talk to that person. Yeah. We'll go online, a small business will go online, and they'll do exactly that. They'll push all these sales pitches in people's faces, and they're not interested. And they'll always be trying to, I'll subtly get it in somewhere, and they're not interested. If we think of what we were talking about as the benefits of social media, that information that people get, the way they can research stuff, the way that they'll want to read articles, that's a sort of softer approach to getting your message out there. And that doesn't mean never sell. It just means that not everything that you do on social media, not every time you post on social media, should it be that door-to-door salesman approach.
We've really changed the way of media, because I was talking about the travel agent and the way we just go on holidays and buy tickets and research things from maps and brochures to doing it ourselves now. But in media, everything's changed from it being kind of the Irish Times and RTE and CNN and these big monoliths of broadcasters and press had the way of the world. They decided what news and information we saw. Now on social media, everybody can, I think the tagline in YouTube used to be, or still is, broadcast yourself. So you have a show and you do it on a Friday morning and you broadcast out to businesses, and nobody auditioned you for this role. You just decide to do it and you can do it. Is that how it works?
That's exactly it, and that's almost what I was talking about from a social media point of view. There's no sales pitch in that. It's a half-hour show where I talk about what's changed in social media and digital marketing in the last week. So it does. We were talking about how quickly it changes. It changes that quickly that I'd have 7 or 8 news stories that I would cover each week and talk about how that's relevant to your business marketing. So that's not a sales pitch. That's a way for me to reach new people who might be members of my audience, people that may become customers in the future. So I enjoy doing that. I wasn't auditioned. No, I'm comfortable in front of the camera. I'm far more comfortable in front of the camera than I am one-to-one. So it's something I decided to start doing when Facebook Live was launched. It just seemed like the sensible thing to do with it.
Is that something you do? You help people who would be, like me, completely frightened and scared in front of, not a microphone, which I'm in front of now and I've been in front of for 34 years, but a camera scares the living daylights out of me.
I can help with that, yeah. So I think one of the problems is that not everyone knows the reason that they're not doing video on social. There'll be people out there that tell you should be just doing video, whatever. But I think, you have to get used to it. You do have to get used to seeing yourself on camera and hearing yourself. You're, of course, used to hearing yourself because you're on radio all the time, but actually it can be quite shocking when we see what we look like in front of a camera. So, yes, I work with businesses to help them with that and to shoot videos and to edit videos on their phone.
And are they having results? Like I talked about the adverts from the social media companies not really being targeted right at us. Are businesses having kind of success with, putting content marketing into social media and then reaching the right people and making sales? I'm kind of skeptical on this, but maybe you know more. Is it working for them?
Again, you have to do it well. So when you're creating a video, it can't just be, an awful lot of people just do a talking head. They just think, it's all about me standing in front of camera and doing something. Whereas, in fact, you need to think, particularly if you're doing a pre-recorded video or even a blog post, it doesn't matter what sort of content it is. You have to think of it from a storytelling point of view. So you have to know what the problems are that your customers have. How can you address those? How do you solve them? If you do that, if you're answering questions for your customers, then you're the go-to person for your business. Although we talked about social advertising not always being accurate, there are ways you can target the right people with your Facebook ads. So it's not down to you necessarily going into Facebook and typing in people who like cats who live in a thigh, which is how you'd find me. But it's about kind of retargeting the type of people who visit your website, the type of people who watch videos that you create, the exact right customers for you. So I think for a business, often people say they want it more and more. It's Instagram now, but whether it's Facebook or Instagram, it's about finding maybe the right one for you, and it might be LinkedIn, not Facebook or Instagram, or it might be Twitter. So it's finding the right network, it's finding the right audience, and then addressing the exact problems that they have and helping them with those problems and showing how, if they work with you, that you're going to be able to make their life better. If you do that and it's not a direct sale, if it's not the door-to-door salesman technique, it will work.
I'm going to show my age now. Do you remember the television programme from BBC Wales, Why Don't You?
I do, yes.
And do you remember their song and their strapline? And it was, why don't you turn off your television and do something less boring instead? Now, there's a reason why I asked this question, because I'm going somewhere. I was told in the past, and I used to work in this area, that you get kind of a calendar for your content and you plan it out in advance, and this is what you're going to say on Tuesday, and this is what you're going to have scheduled to say on Wednesday and Friday and Sunday, and you have it all perfectly worked out in advance. I find that, and this goes for businesses and for people on social media, that go out and do something less boring than being in trying to think of things to put on social media. Do the interesting stuff. Take your camera, your phone with you. Video yourself, photograph, record what you're doing. Then when you're back at base indoors where you can see your screen without all that sunlight, and then do your social media. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, that's a challenge for people like me whose job revolves around sitting in an office a lot of the time. So it becomes challenging to do, apart from obviously in my personal life, I find Instagram stories can be quite boring for me if I'm going to do them, because it's me sitting going, oh, look at the results of this Facebook ad. It's quite kind of interesting. I think if you can't get out there and do stuff, or if it's just not going to be interesting, you should really focus, instead of creating all your content, you should focus on just talking to people. And Instagram and Twitter are the perfect places to get to know people who are in your audience and chat to them. And that's so relevant. You're not filling up the space just for the sake of filling it up. You're actually getting to know the people who can help your business. So if we can't get out and do something interesting, go out and talk to people.
I suppose they're places that don't lend themselves well to the old saying, if you've got nothing to say, say nothing. They're there wanting you to say something all the time. And I suppose if you don't have something to say, go out and find something to say and then say it.
Yes, or go and learn something new. I think that's what I can do as part of my business where I'm shrouded in my office. At least I can go and learn something new and tell people about that as well. So yes, make something interesting to talk about. You're right.
We've been talking to Amanda Webb of Spider Working. Tell us your favourite tip for people with regard to social media.
I think it would be get to know people. Don't think of it as a broadcast platform. Think of it as a place where you're going to be able to make new connections.
That is probably the best advice I've heard this week. Get to know people, and then, the conversations will flow, the relationships will happen, and good things will come from them.
Absolutely.
Tell us where people can contact you.
You can find me anywhere online as Spider Working. I think I'm the only spider working around, so whether it's my website or my social media, that's where you'll find me.
Amanda Webb, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
The fascinating world of social media and the internet and how it interacts on all our lives every day. Our thanks to Amanda Webb of Spider Working. This is 103.2 Dublin City FM, Mental Wealth, and we're back next Tuesday at the same time, 12:30. You can also check us out on social media, Dublin City FM on Twitter and various other places as well. Have a great week, everybody. Talk to you soon. Take care and bye-bye.